Good morning, everybody, and I hope you've had not just a good session this morning, but perhaps an enjoyable evening and an enjoyable breakfast as well for those who joined this morning. I have perhaps come here this morning being persuaded by John Carroll maybe on the one hand, but even more so by my niece Karen. As I had told Karen and John, I had retired a long time ago and said I wouldn't be back again. So what I have done, I was asked to speak on leadership, and so what I have done is a mixture. I've gone back in a few old slides which I presented first, would you believe, in 1988, which seems a long time ago, 30 years ago, and I've used a few of those to show how relevant they still are 30 years later. And obviously over the last number of days I have put some new thoughts together as well. For those of you who have been watching television, and in particular watching Brexit, I think there was an interesting programme last evening where Theresa May gave her press conference at 5 o'clock, and she said, leadership is about making the right decisions, not the easy ones. And what I would suggest is that it isn't that I have any political allegiance to either Conservative or Labour, but I would suggest, in fact, that Theresa May is not doing a great job with leading either Conservative Party or Britain as to where it should be going in Europe, and maybe more of that later. I was asked to speak on leadership, and I said to John Terrell earlier on, John, I'll just try and leadership could be very boring, so give me a chance and I'll talk more of leadership and success, because there's little point in being a leader. You could be a leader of a tribe out in the Amazon basin or something and never achieve very much. But we're talking maybe of leadership in today's world, and in particular in this Western world. And I will start with, if this works, which I will start with just my very first slide as to what leadership is all about. And it's obviously separating success from failure, advancement from retreat, growth from decline. And I show that slide first, as I said, in 1988, 30 years ago. And it's still very relevant today. I talked at the last few minutes about if you were watching Brexit and watching Theresa May. And I would suggest the reason I would be putting forward that she does not lead either the Conservative Party or the British government well is that she may be in a different orbit to what the rest of her party is in or what the rest of the country is in. So there's little point in saying I'm a leader, in fact, if you fail. There's little point if you being a leader if, as I said, if in business, which is obviously is what separates growth from decline, but success from failure. And as I move on to, as I said, these first 5 or 6 slides I used before, but leaders are those who influence the activities of other people. Authority in itself does not make men, or should I say, when I'm using men there, it can be male or female, does not make men leaders. But if you think you're a leader, but you're not influencing anybody, or in fact, if nobody else is following you, there is little point in you living in that cloud all by yourself and thinking that someday people will thank me for doing so. There's little point in the next one, which is just leadership is a pivotal force behind successful organizations. And again, I keep coming back on Brexit, in as much as for those who have been following it, and you'll probably say I'm following it too much, when you actually lose everybody around you and you never pick out what was the problem in the first instance. And of course the problem was that the decision was wrong to leave the EU, and they try to make a better job of that wrong decision. And on the one hand say we must leave, on the other hand recognising that they couldn't leave because of the Northern Ireland issue, because of the trade relationship issue, that Britain still needed the biggest market in the world, a market of 300 million people in Europe. And so if you're going to lead, you better know where you're starting out from. And you better know, in fact, even more importantly, whether or not all those who are following you are still following you, or whether you have actually lost them. The pivotal force behind has said success, but I won't spend time on that one. And I'll move on to another one, which is sensing the future. What's the future for the UK, Great Britain, at this particular time? I don't think anybody in this hall right now, or anybody perhaps in Ireland or anybody in the UK, knows what the future for the UK is. And if you don't know what the future is, which I will bring back into the talk later on, which is success, and you start in being successful by obviously having a vision as to where you're going, where you need to get to. And you need to not just know where you're going yourself, but you need to convince everybody else around you that you are doing the right thing and they have confidence and belief in what you're doing. So I suppose more than anything else, and I wanted to get to this particular slide, as I said, somebody who instills in others the belief and confidence that they can perform better than they ever thought possible. So has anybody in the UK instilled confidence in, call it the voting public, the members of Parliament, as the civil servants? Has anyone instilled in them the belief and confidence that they're all going to be better off at some point of time down the road with the decision that they are trying to have implemented right now? And leadership is tricky, but leadership is all about people who recognize that they don't know it all, but they still have an awful lot to learn. Probably as the oldest person, maybe somebody else might volunteer, maybe, but as the oldest person here today, I'm still learning. So I hope that you're all learning as well. I was asked by Damien O'Reilly out earlier on, I just did an interview with him, and he was saying, were you ever afraid when you started out in Kerry and when you were only 26, 27 years old? And we were never afraid. We worked on the fact that we were young and that we pulled in talented people. And in Kerry, in fact, we never took a view that somebody didn't have talent. We moved a different way. We said, what talent has that person got? If he hasn't the same talent as me, or if she hasn't the same talent as me, it doesn't mean that she or he cannot make a major contribution. So more than anything else, is a leader must have the ability to see what the undeveloped talent is and get it to work. And everybody, I think there are 100, and John told me about 140 people in this hall, and everyone in this hall, including myself, we all have a different talent, but none of us, in fact, have all the talents. And of course, what it's all about is if you are really leading an organization, leading a government or leading anything, it's actually to recognize the talent that you yourself have, to recognize that you have a lot to learn, but even more than anything else, to recognize the abundance of talent that there's around you, and to actually use that talent for success. I said I would give you a few slides initially on leadership, but really, that might come up. I am far more interested in using leadership talent to bring around a successful organization, to bring around a successful government, to bring around whatever it might be. And for those of you who come from, or who live in maybe the southwest of Ireland, I'll ignore all those who live here in the greater Dublin area, but for those who live in the southwest of Ireland, they would know, in fact, that the Southwest and Limerick in particular was absolutely on its knees 10 or 12 years ago. And I was asked to come and help out in Limerick because I lived in the county, but to change Limerick. And it has taken, I've just completed 10 years helping Limerick to make it into something else. I wasn't alone. I had many, many civil servants in government, politicians, obviously many local people, all helping as well. But they needed, as one member of the county council said, it was an outsider came and destroyed this county and them, which was me. And I wanted to go back to the old days. But actually, it took an outsider to come in, which again was me, and to say, look, these are the things that are wrong, and we can all put it right together. So you need, in fact, obviously, a vision for what, I said, for Limerick, what Limerick was to be turned into. There was no vision 10 or 12 years ago. It just kind of went along. Now there's a vision exactly of what it needs and what it must do. And they're saying, I won't say they're saying, we are all saying we will grow Limerick City from 100,000 people to 150. Therefore, that requires so much housing, that requires so many jobs, that requires roads, that requires a whole lot of other people that are involved in providing the housing and the jobs, and the new companies that will come in and set up in Limerick, etc., etc. But you start with, in fact, if you don't start out with having a vision of where you want to be, you cannot, how can you get there? As somebody said, if you cannot see what the future holds and where you want to get to, there is no point in having a strategy on how you might get there. The strategy can only come about by actually saying, this is a strategy as to how we can achieve that vision. This would be a slide back in, again, used many times back, in how to make Kerry different from everywhere else. And this was how to make Kerry Group PLC different from everywhere else. And I said, there must be a vision, there must be a strategy in how to achieve it. There must be a structure so everybody knows what they're doing. There must be absolute clarity so everybody is totally clear saying, that's my job, let me get on with it, I'll deliver it, etc. And there must be responsibility saying, yeah, if you take on that responsibility, just go ahead and get it done. And I've put this on, this is one of my newer slides, which nobody has seen before because it's a very new slide. But I tried to put it in a different way. This is, as I said, I said I would talk about leadership and success. And now I want to delve into success and how you can succeed. And it doesn't matter whether you are, as I said, a team of 2 people running a farm, or a team of whatever it is, 20,000 people, such as in Kerry, that it's the same thing. You know, you must wake up some morning, maybe yourself, your partner, your wife, and say, what do we think this place, what do we think what we are doing will look like in 5 years or 10 years from now? And maybe you just go back to sleep and say, we like Limerick did and slept for 20 or 30 years. Just go back to sleep and say, we'll take whatever comes. We have no vision whatsoever as to what we would like to achieve. But if you want to perhaps, I'll use the phrase, be happy in life or succeed in life, you must have a vision as to what you want to do in some number of years from now. Yeah, I have a great vision as to say, I'm going to be retired in so many years from now. I have tried it twice in the last 10 years and failed, but the vision is still there, so I will retire one of these days. But in a business, you must have a vision as to where you're going. You must have an organization that shares that with you. Obviously, from that organization will come strategy and goals. For those who don't understand, teach and teach and teach over and over again. What made Kerry different, and I know I have some of my former directors in the room, what made Kerry different from everywhere else was that we taught. We used the word teach. And as I spent my life going around the world, I could stay a week in Mexico or a week in Brazil or a week anywhere else, and all we did was met all the people and taught them, discussed and taught them, teach them about what Kerry's vision was, what the vision for their own region was, what the vision for their own company was, and just teach them how to do their jobs better. Obviously, lead by example, make sure that it's teamwork, keep mentoring, and more than anything else, inspire people. So that's a chart which, as I said, I put it together over the last few days and said, okay, what converts leadership into success? And I think if one practiced everything that's on that chart, as they say, the rest would be easy. That's only the vision, but I want to go on a little bit of what I'll move back again to what leadership is about. It links the skills, motivation, and commitment of every functioning individual to achieving the organization goals. So I said whether you're a 2-person organization or a 10,000-person organization, that in fact, if you have a vision and if you link the commitment and motivation of everybody to achieve it, the rest, as I said, is going to be very, very easy. I learned this one from Ivor Kenny that most of you maybe not have heard of. A long, long time ago, Ivor is now dead. But I learned this from Ivor. But it isn't a case of having a leader in an organization, because perhaps that can sometimes do as much harm as good. But there has to be a leadership pyramid with many leaders, each having respect for the knowledge, integrity, and the leadership of the person above him. Again, I use the phrase above him or above her. So there must be, you must have many, many leaders as the organization gets bigger and bigger, and each one having respect and saying that I can learn a lot from that person. I can learn a lot from that person. But of course, that person must be the person at the top, must be the dreamer of dreams, as we say. The person who sets the ambitious targets, who mobilizes the organization to achieving them. But that alone is perhaps not enough. And I go back again to where has Theresa May lost it? And this slide probably says it all. You know, the leader must be the captain of the ship. But he must know the ship's capabilities and the capabilities of the crew. He can't lose them. If you lose them, if you lose your followers, if you lose your fellow workers, you can lead all you like, but you go nowhere. So in fact, you must know them intimately. You must know their capabilities, and you must recognize that you're simply just the captain of a ship, in fact, but you are not carrying the whole burden of the ship with you. What we used to try and do in Kerry in particular was to instill in people, instill in managers, that your job is to find somebody that can do it better than you can. Because if that happens, it means you have improved yourself to the extent that you're going on to do a different job. If you decide, in fact, this is my job, this is what I'm going to do, I'm very good at it, and I will never train anybody else, that means you become the hindrance in the organization rather than the person who is pushing the organization forward. So at all points of time, find somebody who can do your job better than you can do it yourself, and then you've had to move on to something else. I suppose more importantly, never underestimate the ingenuity of individuals. And I've always practiced this one. Don't tell people how to do things. Tell them what needs to be done and say, go away and figure that one out for yourself. And you will be very, very surprised with the ingenuity of the individuals. Not alone that, you will be very, very surprised perhaps with the happiness and job satisfaction and all that goes with it of the individuals when you say, that's what needs to be done. Don't ask me how to do it, go and work it out for yourself. recognise that everyone has far more potential than is apparent, that every organisation hides a depth of talent, and of course if a leader is doing the job properly, they will work on maximising that talent. That doesn't matter whether it is on a hurling field, a football field, a rugby field, or whatever it might else be. In fact, you just look at the people around you and you just say, how much talent do I have here at my disposal, and how can I maximise the use of that talent? You can obviously succeed if you can borrow money. You can obviously succeed if you work very hard. But more than anything else, if an organisation is short of leadership, it eventually will fail. And this is one that I've just put together for you all here, which I put it together, I think, on Tuesday. And it's well worth giving it a little bit of time. But anyone who wants to succeed must have a vision. But more importantly, they must have absolute commitment and be prepared to put in all the hours of the day, the days of the week, or the weeks of the year it takes to succeed. If you do this while remaining absolutely focused, you will invariably succeed. So there's no point in having a vision and expecting somebody else to, as I said, put in all the hours that it takes, all the days of the week or the weeks of the year. It takes absolute vision, total focus, and hard work. I will now go to maybe the topic which I like the best, is what separates success from failure. And I've put about 10 points there together. And obviously beyond the vision comes, make sure you have your short and long-term goals. Don't have too many issues, but just say, what do I have to get done over the next month, over the next 6 months, over the next 12 months, whatever it might take, in order to achieve this vision. If you're in an organisation, or you're in a city like Limerick or a county like Limerick, and you go too fast, you leave everybody else behind you. And so you're in splendid isolation, leading something with no followers. And of course, an immediate recipe for failure. Again, I go back to the Brexit issue. You can't go on your own and say this is going to be good for everybody, and I'll persuade them to do so. There are too many people, and there are too many institutions, organizations, everything else left behind in the current scenario. Obviously, know what you're very good at, which is, everybody knows that. Just complete your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Improve your strengths, eliminate the weaknesses. Keep things very simple. It's amazing how, when you get involved in an organization or in anything else, where people make things very complicated. I go the other way around, where you make it very, very simple. Just look at it a step at a time. Eat the elephant just one bite at a time. Loose brick theory, take down one brick from the wall at a time. Obviously, understand what's going on around you, but more than anything else, remember, change is continuous. What you would do today to solve the problems of tomorrow would be very different to what you might have done 5 years ago. Just to take those one at a time, which is the fastest way to success, is to define what the organisation or the individual is good at. Now, that's something everybody can take away and say, what am I good at? Well, let me put all the hours of the day and the days of the week behind that, and let me stop trying to do what I'm not good at. And obviously increase the effort in that area. Just to remind you again, don't ever think that any task is too great. Just take it a step at a time, a bite at a time, whatever way you want to put it. This one I think I was preaching it in London to my son and a few others about 10 days ago, when they wanted to do something which was basically going into a territory where the two strongest competitors were. And I said, I've been at this for 30 years. I've told everybody, never take a full frontal attack on established competitors. Will you ever just go in and take down a brick from the wall bit by bit, which is very, very important. You've all seen the next slide. It's very straightforward. As I said, it becomes a bit of a joke, which is if you put the frog into water, he'll stay there until he dies, but because it boils up around him. But if you in fact drop him into the hot water, he will immediately jump out. But the last one is perhaps the slide I wanted to get to. You know, as life goes on, it's always a case of you either make dust or eat dust. You know, the world keeps changing around you. It doesn't matter. Many people here are dairy farmers. They work on farms, and it keeps changing. If you all think back, in fact, things were not the same 3-4 years ago as they are now. We had quotas, we had everything. Things were not the same when quotas disappeared. The Russians stopped buying. The prices of milk collapsed. I remember it was maybe the last time I spoke in public, and it was at a group of dairy farmers, and the milk price was falling from 30 cents all the way back down to 20 cents a litre. I think it was 22 cents at that point of time. So I was telling everybody, really get stuck in and produce all the milk you can, because that's taking all those who can compete out of the marketplace, and things will be very good in a year or 2 years' time, and so they were. I thought I would finish with this last one. And people talk in terms of what made Kerry different. And I suppose, being gone from Kerry a little while, it's easy to look back and say, what made Kerry different? And we obviously, number one, we kept huge focus and clarity, vision of where we were going, but absolute focus and clarity, and reminding people, look, we're halfway there, we're 60% of the way there, we're 90% of the way there. And obviously then we pushed out the boat again and said, now that we've got as far as the moon, how do we get as far as Mars as the next time round? Obviously there were short and long-term goals, not just for the organisation, but also for every individual. To measure everybody's individual is contribution. If the contribution wasn't there, you did two things. One is you taught them how to do the job better, but in fact, if they just didn't want to do it, there was no point in keeping them on the payroll. We tried to keep the organisation young. I suppose I practiced what I preached when most people would say I was getting out too young. I was saying I was getting out after 35 years, and it was a matter for a new, younger organisation to emerge and to take Kerry through its next stage. Obviously that all happened, and the real success of any organisation, there are only a few of them that have had that type of success in Ireland at this point of time. We now have obviously the tech companies coming along, but from, call it the pre-tech era, the only two that have continued would be Kerry and CRH. They have managed to, I'll use the phrase, turnover chief executives, turnover management teams, and the organisation never actually stopped in its tracks. Yeah, that's just for business. Keep your costs low. Don't be afraid of taking risks. Kerry took the biggest risk of all time. For those who are here in the room and who know it, the biggest risk of all time was Kerry was on the stock market in '86. It was worth 100 million on the stock market in 1988, and it bought Beatrice Specialty Products in America for 135 million. So nobody would go out today. I think Kerry today is valued on the stock market for about 12 billion. So would they risk going and buying something that was worth 12 billion? And probably no. But we were huge risk takers, and obviously you get rewarded if you get it right. And we kept being rewarded by taking those risks right through the next decade or decades after 1988. This next one, which is I hate the people who maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I hate the people who actually live off, be it desktops or laptops or iPhones or whatever it may be, and actually they live off sending around messages instead of talking to each other. And I'm not saying iPhones and messages and desktops and laptops are not necessary. I'm just saying talk a little bit more and don't live off emails. I hope you can see the bottom of the slide, which is, we had a goal to foster relations at all levels with our customers. I'll have to hurry up because I know I'm running out of time. We crave for knowledge and shared what we had. I always use the phrase that knowledge was the forerunner of strategy, and you never have enough of it. You keep increasing your knowledge every year, regardless of how old you get, and make sure, in fact, you keep increasing your knowledge and using that knowledge well. As we bought companies, we hated corporate structures. We used to dismantle them as fast as we bought them, and try and get down to all levels in an organization, so that we weren't just talking to chief executives or finance directors. When business had no growth, and this is important perhaps even for those in farming. If you take a view as to hell with it, I can't make a living out of what I'm doing, spend more time thinking as to how you could make a proper living. We just say for us, if business had no growth, we just moved it on. We said we're not wasting our time on that. Obviously, we loved decision makers, and the next one is everybody on the team. We expected it to be a team effort. And we were all in it together. It wasn't all good times. We had good times and bad times. We made mistakes. We had strokes of genius at times, etc., etc. And this is the slide perhaps for everybody to take away. There's a great thrill in seeing the dreams converted into reality, sense of achievement. Action plans are done, objectives are realized. Maybe some people will get bored at that, but a good leader or leadership in our organization, what you do is you set the I won't say you reset the objectives. As I said, you've got as far as the moon. Maybe now it's time to set our focus on getting to Mars. So there is no end date, whether you're 20 years old or 30, 40, 50, 70, whatever it may be, there is no end date. You keep setting your objectives to get to the next milestone. I will finish on this very last slide. I've always looked at business or people in business no different to people in sport. And I always say that successful leaders are like winning sports people. They have to be focused. They have to rationalize and understand the opposition. They must follow every game right through to the end, staying tough and absolutely focused all the way, because no game is won until the final whistle. I hope what I've said has been useful. Leadership is very, very special. If you're entrusted with it, obviously use it wisely, but never lose the people that you're leading. And I started with Brexit, and I started with, as I said, the quotation from last night, which was Theresa May saying, leadership is about making the right decisions. I wouldn't totally agree with that. Leadership is about bringing along all the followers with you to believe in those decisions and to believe in that vision. She thinks she has made the right decisions and that everybody will accept them. I would say no, it's different. If all the followers are now left behind, they can hardly be the right decisions. So with that, thank you very much. I think I was told to get up and get off here in 25 minutes. Sorry if I've stayed, Jeff, a little bit too long, but I hope, in fact, that those few slides were useful. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Denis.